Welcome to the channel. Revelation tells us the war was already decided. We already know that, and the problem is how do we explain it? We all know Jesus won the war, but how do we explain it to the far left woke and the millions who watch the woke news, listen to the woke politicians, and really know there's another side to the story, but they're not sure what that other side is. So we're going to take a look at a few chapters in Revelation and cover a few ways you can memorize what is in Revelation and how to explain it in simple terms. Well, here we are in 2023. Last night I just watched a video with Yonomi Parks and Penn Carson, which was really good. If you don't know who Yonomi Parks is, you got to watch some of her videos. She escaped from North Korea, and she's got one video where she says she really, I think she was actually explaining this to Ben Carson, that she went to the university and she just couldn't understand some of these people on how they tended to lean towards communism. She said that she just doesn't get these people pointing their fingers at her, wearing their imitation Gucci bags, their $200 fingernails, and their $400 hair weaves, really obese, overweight, pointing their finger at her because she's just a skinny little Korean woman who was starved for the first 13 years of her life. And they say to her, you got no idea what it is to be oppressed. Well, that's kind of the situation that sums up what we see today. People tend to walk around like they know everything. Anyway, at the same time, just before this was recorded, Chicago successfully drove out all the businesses. And now the mayor decided to install state-owned stores. Oh, where did we hear that before? It's sounding like Chicago is turning into the North Korea along Lake Michigan. Going from the Windy City to the totally communist-controlled city. Well, they're trying to set up something just exactly like North Korea. They might even go over there and send a delegation and find out, some of the things they might be missing. What Chicago did is they intentionally destroyed the free market. They used their little woke army, their gangs. They brought in illegal immigrants. They just forced businesses out with, making it legal to steal and everything else. And what they're doing is they're replacing all the stores that left with state-run businesses. What else is in the news these days? Well, a white woman was crowned Miss Zimbabwe. Boy, did the sparks fly on the woke with that one. Well, one thing I looked at, it is actually called the 2023 Miss Universe Zimbabwe competition. Well, their big complaint was, because it was held in Zimbabwe, they should have chosen a black woman to represent Miss Universe. It's like, anyway, where they were heading. But that shows the double standard. The same people crying about equality in countries with white majorities are claiming a white person should be denied rights in African countries. I mean, that's just the display of double standards. Another news story coming out these days is a video posted on the internet of two teens who stole a car and drove around running over old people. One 72-year-old man was injured, and a retired police chief was killed. Now, we got this radical faction that's considering a lawsuit. They're claiming the police would have never investigated the murder if it didn't involve a black teen killing a white police officer. They claim it would have been impossible to find the suspect based on an image of himself in his video wearing a mask. Well, come on, common sense tells us when they posted that video on the internet, that made it easy for the police to look at the video, find out who posted it, and in other words, the suspect signed his own confession. Well, that's just a few examples of what the world looks like today. Now, we could go on for hours, but I really wanted to cover some of the things I've already posted on the Bible. Basically, there's some short studies the Bible predicted to the letter. Number one is God knew the globalist would tell us to eat bugs. And I'm going to post the links in on here so you can just click on them. And then there's another interesting study of slaves in the last days. We all know when that movie came out, Cry of Freedom or Sound of Freedom, that people were just so against that movie. You know why they were against that movie? Because they are for slavery. There's so many people that are trying to reintroduce slavery in their own terms. So you can watch that video. The Bible predicted it down to the letter. Slaves in the last days. Now, another one is what sin caused the world to be destroyed in the flood. And we know there's only a couple of verses that we can go on, but when we look at the original Greek meaning for the words in those few verses in Genesis chapter 6 explain everything in detail beyond imagination. And then we've got Genesis 6:4. I already did 2 studies on Genesis 6. Describes the people that were responsible for the destruction of the flood and who are responsible for bringing the world to the end for the final last time. Like I said, that war has already been decided. We just have to be able to explain it. What else is happening? Well, most prices have doubled. The government restricted people on Social Security to what? An 8-10% raise? And in September of 2023, we got auto workers on strike, and they're asking for a 40% cost of living raise. They've seen how gas doubled and almost all the prices in the grocery store doubled. Everything doubled. So they're asking for a 40% cost of living raise. I think they're just trying to make a point. Actually, I think they're just trying to keep up with inflation. Well, then there's the open border. And get this, illegal immigrants are getting 3 times what people on Social Security are getting. And we gotta keep in mind that Joe Biden was the guy that initiated and pushed through taxing Social Security. Someone has to ask, is he taxing the illegal aliens that he's supporting at over $3,000 a month now? I think it's like $3,800 a month. Anyways, so we can see there's a double standard in justice. We don't have to go into that. And there's a double standard in taxes. We got wars raging all around the world. And what do? We call people woke who wake up looking for things to complain about all day long. That's what they do. They just wake up in the morning and they look for something to complain about. And they get all the press. They're on the news. They've got the backing of all the social media channels they're on. In other words, if they come out with a video, it goes out to millions and millions of viewers and followers and people that aren't even interested in it. And, They get free advertising, and they get paid for it too. So that's all those people do. They wake up in the morning and they find something new to complain about, come out with a new video, and it goes all over the internet. They are influencers. They're trying to influence, take people away from God, take people away from Jesus. Seems like we could never reach those people. They seem so far to the left, they seem unreachable. Well, we're also going to take a look at Satan gathering his army and what happens. Okay, that's right in the Bible. We're going to go through that in a video. The question is, we know Satan has an army. We see him on the internet and on the news every single day. We have to ask the question, what does Satan do with those people before he calls them to war? We're watching this unfold in front of our eyes today. Well, the one thing we don't realize is, or they don't realize, is we already won the war. You know, the people that they're fighting against, we're the winners. Well, it is to say Jesus already won the war. Now, what we got to do is figure out ways of presenting that fact to the woke, the left, and the millions of people in between the left and the right today. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at what the Bible says. Here we are, starting off in Revelation chapter 16. And I'm just going to start reading this and putting in a couple of comments if you don't mind. It says, "Then I heard a mighty voice from the temple say to the 7 angels, 'Go your ways and pour out on the earth the 7 bowls containing God's wrath.'" So where do these bowls come from? Anyway, I just want to read one more verse. Let's get a feeling for the introduction. "So the first angel left the temple and poured out his bowl on the earth, and horrible, malignant sores broke out on everyone who had the mark of the beast and who worshipped his statue." Okay, so first curse, first vial. Where does this all come from, and when does it take place? Actually, Revelation explains exactly when this is going to take place, so there's going to be no guesswork. We just have to go to not the previous chapter. For some reason, we got to go back 2 chapters, and here we are. We'll go down to the end of Revelation 14. You notice that chapter 16 began with "then," which meant, oh, okay, we got to find out what happened before that. Well, let's go back to another "then" here in verse 14. "Then I saw a white cloud, and seated on a cloud was someone like the Son of Man. He had a gold crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came from the temple, and shouted to the one sitting on the cloud, 'Swing the sickle, for the time of the harvest has come. The crop on the earth is ripe.'" Now we know when it's talking about the harvest of the earth, Jesus had told stories and parables and everything about that. And we all know when they're talking about the harvest of the earth, it's like the last days. Okay, but something happens during those last days. This is the end of the judgment period. If you read the whole chapter, you find out that you're talking about the judgment period here. "So the one sitting on the cloud swung in his sickle of the earth, and the whole earth was harvested. After that, another angel came from the temple in heaven, and he also had a sharp sickle." So we've got 2 angels. One, it's like the Son of Man, is Jesus, and another angel has another sharp sickle. Then another angel who had power to destroy with fire came from the altar. He shouted to the angel with the sharp sickle, "Swing your sickle now to gather the clusters of the grapes of the vines of the earth, for they are ripe for judgment." Now, there's a lot of symbolism to kind of pick through here. Basically, we just want to know what the harvest is at the end of the earth. It's actually, in this specific context, is talking about the end of the judgment system. We know that Jesus talked about it, that the angels know who to gather into the barn and who to gather up and burn. Same thought along this parable. But now is the time to where the end of the judgment period is all done. We know the judgment period ends before the angels can come to the earth and figure out who's saved and who's lost. So this is part of it. So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and loaded the grapes into the great winepress of God's wrath. So after the judgment period is done, these grapes, which are the evil people, go into God's winepress. And then, of course, when we look at, what's going to happen with the 7 last curses, what's going to happen to them. The grapes were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress in a stream about 180 miles long, as high as a horse's bridle. So basically, there's a whole lot of people that aren't going to make it. They're going to be in books of the lost. Their name is not going to be written in the book of life. And let's continue on with the story. Then, so it's a continuation of what was just written. I saw in heaven another marvelous event of great significance. 7 angels were holding the last 7 plagues, which would bring God's wrath to completion. Now, we just went through and we learned that, all of these people that didn't make it in the book of life were all gathered in by the second angel with a sharp sickle, are harvested, put in a wine press, and here is the interpretation of the wine press. It's facing the 7 last plagues. Okay, so there's a lot in here. You can go through it yourself, but now we're just going to jump into the chapter we want to explain, chapter 16. So, what's the first thing these people are going to be facing? They're going to have this horrible malignant sore broke out. In other words, some kind of a mark. They're going to, obviously, if you look around today, it's not very difficult to figure out who's saved and who's lost. We don't know exactly who's saved, and we don't know if the far left woke are actually lost, or there's still a chance for them to redeem themselves. But there's going to come a time that there's no turning back. They're in one group or the other. Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and everything in the sea died. A lot of symbolism again. What does this sea represent? I've actually got a book on parallels and Revelation that go through this in greater detail, so I'm not going to cover all of this and trying to make a short video. Then the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs, and they became blood. So all of this water becomes blood. It's going to be a little bit easier to understand once we get into the end of Revelation and we start seeing how the people that are in heaven can drink freely from the river that flows from the throne. But now all of this water that's going to be drank here on earth is becoming blood. In other words, this is the winepress that they're facing. And I heard the angel who had authority over all water saying, "You are just, O Holy One, who is and who always was, because you have sent these judgments." In other words, judgment process is over, and now they're beginning to face their sentencing. Okay, since they shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets, you have given them blood to drink. It is their just reward. In other words, this is showing us what are these people doing to God's holy people, and what are they doing to the prophets and everything else. So basically, it's payback time. So now you can take that and plug it into the interpretation of the blood. the Bible just supplied its own interpretation that blood represents payback. So all the stuff they're doing here is going to go back on them somehow. But we got to remember one thing. One thing that is consistent throughout history: there is not one communist nation that trusts another communist nation. They all want to destroy each other. So here are these people who are trying to destroy the holy people of God and the prophets. Now they're facing off at each other, and who knows what that holds. And I heard a voice from the altar saying, "Yes, O Lord God, the Almighty, your judgments are true and just." Well, what is going to be true and just? Well, these people that wanted to take over the whole earth, God is eventually going to say, okay, judgment's all over, you're lost. It doesn't matter what you do, you can't be saved. So, show the universe, show all the angels in heaven what you're going to do when you gain all of this power and wealth and fortune and everything else, and you're still greedy and you still can't trust one another. All this stuff makes sense because we're living through it. Then the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, causing it to scorch everyone with fire. Now, this is one of the things. This is like payback time. And we're seeing this. There's the left, the woke, they're stealing trillions of dollars, insisting that they can control the weather. They're doing the same thing that Egypt did. The Egypt stole everything from the slaves that had basically nothing, but made them get something, so they had something to give to the gods, and the gods were really, what? The people in charge, the pharaohs. We're seeing the same thing happening today. That's what the woke is trying to achieve. They're trying to restructure, reenact, bring up the Egypt, the nation of Egypt again. Everyone was burned by the blast of the heat, and they cursed the name of God who had control over all these plagues. They did not repent of their sins and turn to God and give him glory. Hey, they're already lost at this point, so it really wouldn't matter. But you can see, no matter when God decides to step in, they're not going to change. Okay, that's one thing we need to understand. Then the fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and his kingdom was plunged into darkness. His subject ground their teeth in anguish. Is this physical darkness or is this spiritual darkness? Well, they're pretty much into the spiritual darkness. But what does that mean when darkness covers darkness? Does that mean that they can actually see their darkness? Or are they seeing, they can't trust the other communist parties or nations? They can't trust the other organizations and everything else? I mean, they're thriving they're living within the darkness that they made. They made their own prison, and now they're going to have to sleep in it. And they cursed the God of heaven, their pains and their sores, but they did not repent of their evil deeds and turn to God. You see how this is repeated again? Pay attention to repetition in the Bible. Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great Euphrates River, and it dried up so the kings of the east could march their armies towards the west without hindrance. Now, people keep on saying Euphrates dried up now and this and that and everything else. You got to remember, look at the Bible, grab some stuff out of it. The Euphrates River actually surrounded the city of Babylon. And then, what's his name? Darius came in there, plugged up the river, and then when the river wasn't protecting Babylon anymore, he went through the brass gates in the river, walked right into Babylon, and defeated it in one night. Hey, read it. It's in Daniel. Great story. So, if you put all these stories together, there's a million different ways that you can explain that Jesus already won the war. The war's already been decided, okay, to these people. And I saw 3 evil spirits that looked like frogs leap from the mouths of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So we're going to have 3 entities to deal with. The dragon, you know, you can put whatever symbolism you want on it, but it's going to be, you know, taken right, go back to Daniel, read about the dragon and everything else. The beast, you can read, basically, it's in Revelation chapter 13. Revelation 13 is pretty easy to understand because it starts out with a leopard. The leopard's really good at camouflage. And you can see the progression on the devil keeps on trying to hide behind a different symbol. The devil doesn't want to be seen. You know, that's why the devil has his demons coming out and making these people so evident. And the false prophet. Well, we got a bunch of them. I mean, who are you going to put this on? George Soros? What's his name with Microsoft that wants people to eat bugs? It doesn't matter. You know, God had a whole bunch of prophets, and every single story in the Old Testament, you know, there was Jeremiah, Isaiah, whatever, they were all facing off against a group of false prophets. Even look at Elijah. What did he go up against? 200 or 300 false prophets of Baal. They are demonic spirits who work miracles and go out to all the rulers of the world to gather them for battle against the Lord in that great judgment day of the Almighty. So here, we can basically see how Satan's demons are all spread out all over, and they're only influencing, I don't know, pick a number, 3%, 10% of the people are actually that influenced by demons right now. We are the majority. We're going to breed the majority all the way to the end. But this small number, and I'm guessing, based on what I'm reading here in Revelation, that number is going to start growing. I mean, look at what they're doing. They're giving illegal aliens 3 times the amount of money that people are trying to live off of on Social Security. They're buying their army. What did the military leaders do? I mean, how many times we read in the Bible that, you know, they bought chariots out of Egypt, that they paid they took the gold out of the temple and paid the Assyrians for their army and all this stuff. Paying an army is nothing new. It's not a new concept. It's not a new idea. It's exactly what they're doing. They're running this war over in Ukraine with hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're taking it all back. They're spending trillions of dollars on the new Green Deal. They're not doing a damn thing. You don't see anything getting done. What happened to all that trillions of dollars? There's basically $22 trillion missing out of the budget right now. And in September, at the end of September, the government's going to run out of money again. Well, I hate to tell you this, but I remember in spring, they just put in another trillion, 1.4 trillion or something to run the budget to the end of the year, and here it is in September, and they're out of money already. Yeah, okay, what happened to this? Okay, look, I will come unexpectedly as a thief. Blessed are all who are watching for me, who keep their clothing ready, so they will not have to walk around naked and ashamed. Well, how does that fit in with what we see today? What we see today is basically the woke, the left, are not ashamed of being naked. They're not ashamed of people seeing how they're stealing, how they've got these double standards and all that stuff. They're actually proud of it. But Jesus doesn't want his people to be like that at all. He doesn't want them to feel ashamed, because just think of the shame they're going to see when Jesus appears, and all of a sudden to them, well, guess what? That wasn't a fairy tale. It's all true. They're going to feel such a deep sense of shame. That's why they all hide underneath the rocks and in caves and all that stuff. Because all this guilt and shame that they're trying to keep out of their conscience now is going to be overwhelming when they finally see it's true. So is Jesus coming unexpectedly to the woke? Or are we going to kind of expect it? Or are we going to be so busy watching all this stuff go on that when we least expect it, here it is, it happens. And the demonic spirits gathered all the rulers and their armies to a place with the Hebrew name Armageddon. And I know there's been all kinds of movies, and it actually came up with a whole series of movies and all this stuff. Don't pay attention to that Left Behind stuff. It's based on 1-2 sentences out of the whole Bible. But basically, all these demonic spirits are going to gather all. It says rulers and their armies. We already know who the rulers are. I mean, we see them plain as day. Who's going to join their army? Somebody's got to make a choice. Either one way or another. If we look at what's going on, look at what Hitler did. Hitler raised the taxes. The businesses and companies couldn't pay their taxes, so he took over the businesses. He fired all the workers. He put slave labor in all of those companies. Not all of them, but for the most part, 70-80% of them. Unless, you were pretty high up in his staff, you lost your company. That's what happens with communists and socialists. And then there was no jobs for anybody. Oh, yeah, but you can join the army. See, he was buying his own army in a little different way. And we're seeing that happen again. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a mighty shout came from the throne in the temple, saying, "It is finished." It's done. So this army is all gathered up, and guess what? It is finished, like we said. The war is already decided. War is already won. Then the thunder crashed and rolled, and lightning flashed, and a great earthquake struck, the worst since people were placed on the earth. And we all know this is going to happen. The great city of Babylon split into 3 sections, and the cities of many nations fell in the heaps of rubble. So God remembered all of Babylon's sins, and he made her drink the cup that was filled with the wine of the fierce wrath. Now remember, we just looked at, all those grapes, all those people put into the wine press, and the Bible is interpreting itself. All of these sins, all of this stuff these people are doing, all this stuff that you're trying to justify is going to come back at them. No doubt about it. And every island disappeared, and all the mountains were leveled. There was a great hailstorm, and hailstones weighing about 75 pounds fell from the sky onto the people below. They cursed God because of the terrible plague of the hailstorm. And that's it for this chapter. So what actually happens? The devil and his 3 demonic spirits gather the rulers and their armies together, and boom! There's no battle, there's no war, there's no aftermath to any of this stuff. God deals with them. And that's it. So it's really that simple. And we've got a couple more chapters to take a look at. So don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe, because I'm coming out with more videos and adding them on whenever I feel influenced by the Spirit to explain things. And we need a good gathering place to gather our little army of sending people out and explaining that this war has already been decided in plain, simple terms. And hey, if you want to get together with people on this channel and start a prayer group or something else, everybody chips in a little bit. We can all get it done. And just wait for Jesus' return. So, thanks for listening, and thanks for subscribing.